So today we begin with chapter 7. So in part 1 I said we have altogether 8 chapters and we have finished 6 chapters with yesterday. So we have 2 more chapters. We will try to finish in the first 2 hours, and then third and fourth session we can take up the letters proper. And these 2 sessions are little more stuffy, so that's why I said today onwards we are discussing some serious things, and so please pay more attention. So chapter 7 is a general analysis of Pauline theology. Yesterday we have seen few characteristics of his theology, but the general analysis of Pauline theology is different from that. We have seen few characteristics of his way of theologizing. Pauline theology is a synthesis of anthropology, Christology, and soteriology. We take up one by one and discuss. First one, Pauline anthropology. Now, Pauline anthropology is a synthesis of Hebrew anthropology and Greek anthropology. But it is not merely a synthesis of these both, but Paul also adds his own powerful insights into his anthropology. He takes something from Hebrew anthropology, he takes something from Greek anthropology, but he adds his own powerful insights. So, Pauline anthropology is a synthesis of both Hebrew anthropology and Greek anthropology, but with Paul's own powerful insights. And these powerful insights of Paul are coming from his encounter with the risen Christ and his deep reflection on the Christ event, suffering, death, and resurrection of Christ. Now we said Pauline anthropology is the synthesis of Hebrew anthropology and Greek anthropology. Now what is Hebrew anthropology and what is Greek anthropology? We should know it. Hebrew anthropology. So I put it in a synthesis way. Hope you get it. First of all, it is a holistic approach. So Hebrew anthropology is a holistic approach. I would give you some references from the Old Testament from which we can understand Hebrew anthropology. First reference, Genesis 1:26 to 31. It speaks about the divine dimension of a human person and the task that is entrusted to humankind. So you must read for yourself these references. Then it is more clear for you. So Genesis 1:26-31 speaks about the divine dimension of human person, because man is created by God. God's spirit is infused into human being. So naturally there is a divine dimension in the human person. Man is not merely a body. So it speaks about the divine dimension of human person and the task entrusted to the humankind. Man is responsible. So that is clearly seen in Genesis chapter 1, 26 to 31. Then second reference, Genesis chapter 2, verses 7 and 15. Speaks about the human person as the divinely animated matter with a task to fulfill. It speaks about the human person as the divinely animated. That is to say, man is animated by God, guided by God, formed by God. So it speaks about the human person as the divinely animated matter with a task to fulfill, with a responsibility to fulfill. Now let me summarize these 2 references. Man is created by God, animated by God, and man is supposed to obey God. Now the same reflection is also found in Psalm 8. The reflection of what we have seen is also found in Psalm 8. So you must read for yourself Psalm 8. I give you more references. Psalm 139, 13 and 14 verses. It presents the miracle of the creation of the human person. Then Isaiah 42:5 and Wisdom 15:11 present human as spirit and matter. Then Wisdom 1 16, then chapter 2 verse 24. So Wisdom 1 16 to 24 criticizes the godless for their wrong understanding of human life. Then we find also the evil elements in human being. What about evil elements? The evil that is within us. So according to Hebrew anthropology, evil elements are due to flesh. So Paul also speaks about spirit and flesh. So the influence of Hebrew anthropology. Isaiah 40:6 to 8. Hebrews also saw the contrast between flesh and spirit. Contrast. Spirit and flesh are opposed each other. That we find in Psalm 16:9 and 73:26. So as a consequence of this evil in a human being, the lifespan is reduced to 80. So that idea is there in Psalm 90:10. Then at death, what happens? At death of a human being, the spirit returns to God. Man is in Sheol when dies. References Psalm 6:6, 55:16, 88:5 to 13. Then Book of Job, wisdom literature. Book of Job 17:13 to 16. Isaiah 14:9 to 11. Then 38 to 18. And later believed in the resurrection. So at death, spirit goes to God, man is in Sheol, but later what happened? There is also resurrection. So the idea of resurrection also is there in the Old Testament. So Hebrews also believed in resurrection. Isaiah 26:19, Daniel 12:2, then 2nd Maccabees 7:9 and 23, then same book, 2nd Maccabees chapter 14, 45 and 46. Which is possible only righteous. So only righteous shall be risen. Salvation is possible only for the righteous people. Unrighteous shall be punished. That is the theology we find in the Old Testament, in the prophetic books. Righteous shall live, unrighteous punished. What is spirit and what is flesh? Just in one sentence. Spirit is given by God and it is a generating power. And what about flesh? Flesh is perishable, vulnerable, powerless. Flesh is weak, spirit is strong, power. That is in summary. Now what about Greek anthropology? Because Paul's anthropology is a synthesis of Hebrew anthropology and Greek anthropology. So more or less whatever the ideas now we have listened of Hebrew anthropology, everything we find in Paul's letters, but with his own powerful insights. Basically, it is a dualistic and characterized by dichotomy. So according to Greek anthropology, soul is the spiritual reality imprisoned in the body as a matter. There is a dichotomy between spirit or soul and body. So soul is the spiritual reality imprisoned in the body as a matter. Soma in Greek means body and sema in Greek means the tomb. So body is in the tomb of the soul. Now what is salvation according to Greek anthropology? Salvation is the liberation of the soul from this body. Now having studied in brief both Hebrew anthropology and Greek anthropology, now let us see the characteristics of Pauline anthropology. What are the characteristics of Pauline anthropology? I will give you point by point. It is first characteristic. It is neither Hebrew nor Greek, but a synthesis with specifically Pauline characteristic. So that is first characteristic of Pauline anthropology to be noted. Then second characteristic, we find the influence of Greek dualistic thoughts in Pauline anthropology, which are the aspects of dichotomy. And I will give you examples. First example, Romans 7:1 to 25. There you find life in spirit, the dichotomy, life in spirit, life and spirit, life in spirit. Specifically 7:24 speaks about the body, spirit and body. Then we find the earthly tent and the heavenly tent. 2 Corinthians chapter 5 verses 1 to 8. So here heavenly tent, earthly tent. Earthly tent, what Paul means is our body. There is a dichotomy between earthly tent and heavenly tent. Third characteristic is also influenced by Hebrew anthropology. He is also influenced more, we can say actually, he is influenced more by Hebrew thought than Greek thought, which is thoroughly transformed by Paul's encounter with the risen Christ. So Paul has transformed the Hebrew anthropology into another level, as acquired because of his own personal encounter with the risen Christ. So these are the three characteristics. First is a synthesis, then is influenced by Greek thought and influenced by Hebrew thought. Now, what is specific to Pauline anthropology? Pauline anthropology is more concerned with the aspects that constitute the totality of the human person. Pauline anthropology is concerned with the elements or with the aspects that constitute the totality of the human person. So Paul brings in various elements of the human person, not only just the body, flesh, spirit, but he brings so many other elements. There is soul, there is mind, there is will, there is heart. So Pauline anthropology brings all these elements to constitute the totality of the human person as a complete. Now we shall see these elements one by one. So aspects of the human person. First one is body, Greek word soma. So what is body? How to understand this body? It is visible, material, then it is the immediate medium of our sharing in the material creation. Without body, we don't exist. All our relations, all our contacts, all our sharing in the material world is taking place through the medium of our body. Christ and his body are a reality. That is to say, Christ was fully human. He was, of course, fully divine, but at the same time, fully human. Example, Hebrew 10, 5 to 7. Then last point under that, body is in relation to sexuality, and sexuality has relational rootedness. So in that sense, it is a gift, at the same time it is a task. Then second aspect of human person is the soul. What is the Greek word for soul? Psyche. It is a living, dynamic and active. Then third element is spirit. It is the Greek word for spirit, pneuma. It is the human share in the divine. In other words, it is the God-related principle in human being. And it is the spirit that elevates the soul to a higher level. Put the references, Psalm 31:5 and 1 Thessalonians 5:23. Then we have another element of human person, that is mind. Greek word for mind is nous. Mind is understanding, reflecting and reasoning aspect. Now, the spirit operates through mind. The next element of human being or person is will. What is the Greek word for will? Thelema. What is will? Willing, no? Willing or a deciding aspect. If you have will only, you can decide. Where the convictions are brought into the level of action. You may have a lot of ideas in your mind, but it is the will that all our ideas are brought into the level of action. If you are willing, you can do it, we say, no? So it is the will, that aspect, that element in us that helps us. Then the spirit has to assist the will. Then we have heart, cardia. It is affectionate and passionate. In 1 Kings chapter 3 verse 9, Solomon prayed for an understanding heart. Finally, we have flesh. What is the Greek word for flesh? Sarx. So, flesh, as we know, it is weak, mortal, vulnerable. All the sinful dimensions are seen in the flesh. Now we move to the second point in chapter 7, that is Christology. So we have seen now anthropology, Hebrew anthropology, Greek anthropology, and then at the end, Pauline anthropology. Now, what is the understanding of Christology according to Paul? Actually, Christology is an authentic and integrated existence for Paul. That is to say, without Christ, there is nothing. All his life, all his theology is centered upon Christ, Christ-centered. Jesus Christ is the authentic person, a model par excellence. Then he is always guided by the Spirit. So he is a person, is also a spirit. He is always guided by the Spirit. Totally human, tempted like any one of us, but never heeded to sin. Never gave himself to sin. Hebrews 4:15. Then he means Christ. Christ has an authentic relationship with God, with himself, and with others, and also the realities of the world, cosmic nature. Christ is authentically related to God, the Father, with himself, and with others, and with the entire cosmic world. That is the realities of the world. That is why scholar Bonhoeffer says, the man for the others. What is the ultimate act of Christ? My body broken for you, my blood poured out for you. 1 Corinthians 11:24. Then as we see in the book of Hebrews, letter to the Hebrews, he is the high priest of the humankind. No? The theme of the letter to the Hebrews is Christ as the high priest. He is the high priest of the humankind. Hebrews 2:17. So this is the understanding of Christology according to Paul. Then one more idea into that. Through his death and resurrection, Christ became the spirit body person. Through his death and resurrection, Christ became the spirit body person and the source of divine person. How? It is that divine spirit that assists the human spirit. It is through death and resurrection of Jesus we are also risen, united with God the Father. So the divine spirit assists, inspires, and guides the human spirit according to the spirit, not according to the flesh. Romans 8:5-13. Now we move to the third point, soteriology. What is soteriology? Yeah, the salvific work of Christ. Now Paul explains the salvific work of Christ through Old Testament concepts. So he makes use of the concepts of Old Testament and explains the soteriology, the salvific plan, the salvific work of Christ. What are the concepts in the Old Testament connected to soteriology? Liberation, then we have reconciliation, justification, and redemption. When we study the letter to the Romans, we will discuss again these aspects. What is liberation in the Old Testament? God liberating the people from Egypt, Egyptian slavery. Now that he takes, and how does Paul explain? Christ upon the cross, he liberated the human beings from sin, the captivity of sin. So Paul speaks about the liberation from sin. Romans 5:12-21. From the slavery of sin as well as from the slavery of the law. Slavery from sin, Romans 5:12-21. Then from the slavery of the law, Romans 7:1-25. And Paul also speaks, Christ redeemed us from the tragedy of death. We are also saved from our death. Romans 6:3-11. So liberation from sin, liberation from the law, and liberation from the death. Freedom is the hallmark of Christian life. Galatians 5:11. That is to say, freedom of the children of God. No, Paul speaks that. Romans 8:14-16. And not of the flesh. Galatians 5:13. Then what is the concept of reconciliation? So Paul explains the reconciliation work is effected through Christ. We are reconciled to God through Christ. So Paul speaks of reconciliation work, part of salvific work, is effected through Christ. 2 Corinthians 5:18-20, Ephesians 2:11-19. Paul also speaks about the cosmic reconciliation. Christ effects also the cosmic reconciliation. What does it mean, cosmic reconciliation? Christ reconciles not only human beings but also the entire nature, animal world, the animated, inanimate things. No? So that is cosmic reconciliation that we find in Colossians 1:19-20. Justification. We will be dealing a lot in the letter to the Romans. Justification, first of all, is an act of God. God making one justified on the basis of faith without any human performance. God is the judge. So justification is an act of God making one according to Him on the basis of faith and not according to our performances. So this is totally opposed to the Jewish law. For them, these acts are very important. Good, with that we conclude chapter 7. When we come back, we will take up chapter 8.